happened November the 13th, 2015, a Friday evening in Paris like many others, until it wasn't. By its end, 130 people would be dead, murdered by terrorists linked to the Islamic State group. The gunmen and suicide bombers went from bars to restaurants to the National Football Stadium, murdering people indiscriminately. They also brought their horror to the Bataclan Theatre, where the Eagles of Death metal band were playing. 90 people died inside that venue in a nightmare that lasted nearly 3 hours. Today, 20 people will go on trial in France for their role in those attacks. We are joined this morning by Katie Healy-Nolan, who, along with her partner David, survived the Bataclan attack. Katie, good morning. You're welcome and thanks for joining us.
Thanks very much.
Katie, how are you feeling this morning, thinking about this trial starting in Paris?
It's obviously quite an emotional time in our lives, but it can only be a good thing finally getting the proceedings for justice for the victims of that night.
Will it help you personally in any way, do you think, particularly given that I suppose many of those who were directly involved in the attacks on that evening are dead?
I don't know. I don't think this is going to be something that ever really leaves me personally, and I can only speak for myself, but to have some kind of justice carried out will be a bit of a relief, I suppose, is the only way I can put it. But I don't feel it's something that's ever going to absolve what happened that night, obviously.
How do you feel towards the men who did this?
I don't have any feelings towards the men that did this. There's no space in my life for any kind of hatred or anger towards them. There's no good that can come from that for me or for my family. So I choose not to really think of them and put my focus on the victims and the people who lost their life on the night. They're more important and always will be. So that's why I'm using my voice that I have when I'm asked to speak about the night. I want to use my voice because there's people who had that option taken from them in seconds. So I'm in a position where I can speak, so I will.
And I'm very conscious of asking you to recount a very traumatic event in your life. So I'm not going to do that directly because I know how hard and painful that is. But I will ask you, 6 years on from when it happened, is it in any way easier to deal with?
No, in some respects it's almost like it's hard to believe that it really happened to us and that this is something that has actually happened in our lives. We live with, I honestly can't remember the last time where it hasn't come up in conversation between myself and my husband in any shape or form. It's something that we live with every day. My husband lives with pain due to his injuries. It's very tough. It's something I think of all the time, and I never, ever will forget.
And how is David? Because he was shot in the foot, wasn't he?
He was, yeah. He's had several surgeries to, I suppose, rectify what happened, but he will never have the same quality of life that he had, but we're both very aware that he has his life, so we're very grateful for that. But he lives with a great deal of pain. He obviously has other issues arising from the injury to his foot. He has knee pain, back pain. He lives with chronic pain, which is difficult for a young man, but he's just lucky that he has his life, and that's the only way we can look at it.
Did you feel guilty for surviving, Katie?
Well, yes. It was something, when you've kind of made your peace that you're going to die and then you survive, it's a strange thing to kind of come to terms with. But I suppose everybody who was there that night has some degree of guilt because it was such a horrific thing. What we saw will never be forgotten. It can never be forgotten. No amount of therapy or talking about it or not talking about it is ever going to take that away. But I'm extremely lucky and extremely grateful that I did survive, as is David. So again, that's the only thing I can focus on, and trying not to let any kind of guilt creep in too much, and to try to live our life to the fullest as much as we can.
Are you able to sleep, for example? Are you able to go and have a full night's sleep every night without nightmares, without thinking about it?
At times, yes, of course. But it's something that it's always with you. And sometimes when you're kind of having a good run of things, you can get a bit too comfortable, and then something very minuscule will remind you of it, such as if someone takes a photograph with a flash in the corner of a room when you're not expecting it. Things like that, or even just the smell of candles on a birthday cake can be extremely, extremely triggering. Anything that smells kind of sulfuric, it just brings you right back there, and it's got nothing to do with it. So you're never not thinking of it, and even when you're not thinking of it, subconsciously there's something there to remind you.
That sounds like post-traumatic stress disorder.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people there that night obviously suffer from that, and it's just something that we're learning to live with.
Are you able to go into an enclosed space again?
I have, yes, we have. We've obviously to move forward with your life, and because we have the chance to do so, we have tried to go to concerts and things like that. We went to a very big concert, a Bruce Springsteen concert, quite soon after the event, which was very emotional and strangely difficult to do. It was a completely different setting, but we had to do it to get used to crowds and things like that again. But it's very difficult, and of course going to smaller venues, it's much harder, and it's something that you can go and you can feel fine, but you're always looking at the exits and making sure you know where they are.
Yeah. Absolutely. And you talked about David there, and he's had numerous surgeries. He wasn't able to make that full recovery that he had hoped for back then. And I was reading the account of when you and he escaped from the Bataclan, when you were out on the street, and all the amazing people who helped you that night. Will you tell us about the woman in that apartment who brought you inside?
Yeah, there was a group of people kind of hiding behind railing outside the front of an apartment block, and they saw me dragging David up the street, and obviously seeing that I was speaking English, any French I had completely escaped my memory, and they called us over and let us join their group, and together we got into a foyer of an apartment building. And essentially what the girls did, they basically triaged David there and then, and really helped stop his blood loss. And we really attribute his life being saved to those girls. They were amazing, an amazing group of people. And there was a doctor who lived in that apartment building as well, wasn't there? Yeah, when we finally got kind of, I suppose, through the foyer and up to the floors, we were lucky enough there was a GP there, so they were able to help us and keep us calm. And when the streets kind of cleared, they took us in their car and got us to the hospital and got David treatments. Yeah, and that was incredible in itself, because they would have had no idea what was going on and the dangers all around them as they got you into the car and drove to the hospital. Yeah, I honestly couldn't give you a timeline of how long we were there or how short, but they made sure that the streets seemed calmer, and they got us as soon as they could to help, because there was just no ambulances. Obviously, Paris was going through an incredible event, so we were just exceptionally lucky and forever grateful to them, and they're people we love very much. And I was listening to a sociologist on radio this morning talking about the trial starting today. It's going to last a very long time, Katie, but she was saying that the hope from many in France is that this was a national trauma which will become a national history, part of France's national history. And that may be good in theory, but that will be hard to achieve, won't it, for the country, but for particularly those like you who were there? I mean, this was a monumental event in our life, but also for the country of France. What happened was so horrific, and it will be extremely difficult to kind of have it chalked down to the history books and not have it in. It's our living memory, and it will always be with us. It's just extremely hard, and it's almost impossible for me to comment on that. It's just a very difficult subject, really, to be honest with you.
Well, look, we are very grateful to you for taking our call this morning, and we wish you and David and your family all the very best. Thank you very much indeed. Katie Healy-Nolan joining us live there.